main tasks in the nearer future, and which also has a goal to prepare the establishment of the International Association for Reconciliation Studies, which will take part in the end of the conference tomorrow. We have, as a time schedule, started now at German time 1:30, because it's the only small time slot where it's possible for people in the US and in East Asia to attend without staying at 2 o'clock in the morning awake. So we have only something like 2 hours today, tomorrow a bit more. And we had also to decide, because of this worldwide event, that we make it short. There will be short interventions and also very short discussion. I apologize for this. These are topics which normally should engage long discussions and reflections. And as we cannot do it better, we even had to decide to say, if there are questions, to win some time, we ask you to write them into the chat, and then they will be gathered and read here, and people will answer on the questions here in order not to win a bit of time. You can write them at all moments into the chat. So my name is Martin Leiner. I'm professor here in the Friedrich Schiller University in Jena, and I'm very glad and honored to host this event. And we are working together in a group to prepare the establishment of the International Association since about 1 year. And members of these groups are Karina Korostelina from George Mason University in the US, and Professor Toyomi Asano from Waseda University in Tokyo. And I would like to hand over to both of you to present. So please, Karina, greet the public.
Yeah, so I want to expand this warm welcome, which already Martin gave to everyone. We're really happy to see people from all over the world in this Zoom meeting, and we really hoped to be all of us in Jena in this time, and we were until last minute we're deciding what to do, and unfortunately we could not be in the same room, but it's wonderful that we can be in the same screen together today. This is very exciting day for all of us, because, and I hope for you too, because we really see this inaugural event as envisioning how we see the future of reconciliation. And presentation today, as we see them, will be not about papers or research. It's how we see what can be done, where we can see bridges. If you see the program, people come from all over the world, from multiple disciplines, addressing different issues of reconciliation. And this is our vision here, really be as inclusive as possible, give variety of ideas, and creating this creative bridges which help us to understand how we can work together for the better of the society. So welcome, and it's just a beginning, very exciting beginning, and we see a lot of possibilities of very great work.
Yeah, thank you very much, dear Karina. And now Toyomi, who worked a lot for the preparation, who visited Jena even, and who went also to Washington. And he made also give us all a push to go ahead with this establishment of the association. So we are also very grateful for Toyomi's activities. Please, Toyomi, greet the public.
Thank you, Martin, for introducing me. And welcome everybody from the world to our opening conference of IARS. So many of us are participating just remotely. But I guess this COVID-19 pandemic situation is a good occasion for us to deeply transform ourselves by reflecting our own society, both on the national and global levels. I feel that many quick innovations might have already started, not only in a technological field, but in our academic field. Thank you first to Professor Martin and the staff of the Jena Center for Reconciliation Studies. And thank you also to Karina. I'm very glad to welcome other professors to our network of reconciliation studies, which has just started now. We have already communicated a lot and discussed over the importance of memories and values which support emotions that sometimes conflict severely. Conflict resolution studies have been developed following the end of the Cold War, but I feel we need other approaches to involve all conflicts, including developed countries, because we are facing many national uprisings represented by the Black Lives Matter movement in the US. On the other hand, nationalism in general is also being economically evoked by the gap between the poor and the rich in our nation. It is time for us to start the reconciliation studies together as a part of global citizens. I'm from Tokyo, which belongs to Japan as a nation and to Northeast Asia as a region, where economically well-developed countries exist. But in this region, Japan once expanded itself as an empire, while the Cold War turned into a real war, both on the Korean Peninsula and in Vietnam. Even now in this region, including North and South Korea, Japan, Hong Kong, Taiwan, China, conflicts bound with democratic values, historical memories, and nation buildings are being contested severely. Economic interests simply do not automatically lead to reconciliation between the nations, but seems to evoke stronger conflicts. Reconciliation studies is critically important in these regions. If we compare this region to others in this conference, I believe it would be possible to successfully make a new synthetic framework to argue these conflicts with our shared concepts. I'm looking forward to discussing it with every participant from now on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Toyomi. So before we start, I would like to apologize that we cannot invite you physically here to Jena because of the COVID-19. We had already funding for people to come, but it was not possible. If not, we would have enjoyed to have a wonderful event here, to go out eating together, which should normally be part of such a start of an association. But we will have other conferences, if possible, every year in this association, and there will be meetings. And Toyomi also can say something for the next conference, which should take place in Tokyo.
I'm planning the next Tokyo conference on 8th and 9th in August next year. I don't know whether we could welcome everybody from the world because of the COVID-19 situation, but I really hope welcome everybody to Tokyo on 8th and 9th in August next year. Thank you so much. Please reserve your schedule in your memo. Thank you.
Yeah, this is really great that this is already planned and there is already something in preparation in Tokyo. Thank you so much, Toyomi. Now I give the word and present to you Dr. Francesco Ferrari, who is the coordinator of the Jena Center for Reconciliation Studies, and he is coordinating now the discussion and the presentation. So maybe you present yourself briefly and then we can start. One question also will come up to you that we would like to record this session and we would need your okay for this. Maybe you can give us a sign on this whether it's okay for you or not. If you are not okay with this, we will anyhow erase it or not record it here, but it might be also a historical moment. Thank you, Karina. You just showed your hand that it's possible to record it. And thank you so much for this. And we would also later like to publish maybe a written version of your contribution of today in the first issues of our journal we want to found. So now, Francesco Ferrari.
Thank you very much, Martin. Thank you, everybody, for joining the conference. I'm Francesco Ferrari. I'm coordinator of the Jena Center for Reconciliation Studies and of the doctoral school, Religion, Conflict, Reconciliation. I'm very happy to see that this day is happening. So I met Professor Asano last year in Düsseldorf in a conference for the establishment of reconciliation studies at the University of Düsseldorf. In Jena, we have our research center on reconciliation since 2013, and we are very happy. Today is a really historical moment. I think it's a symbolic, very high moment that we are bringing reconciliation studies in worldwide perspective. And I'm very happy now to give a word to our first speaker. So Professor Karina Korostelina from the US, conflict analyst. Conflict analysis and resolution is her field. The title of the talk is Reconciliation Education for Peace. Every talk today is just limited to 7 minutes. So they are instant talks, let's say. But I think they are very helpful to see also the transdisciplinarity that is in our association. We are not only an international association, we are also a transdisciplinary association. I think it's a great strength of our group. So please, Professor Korostelina, thank you.
Thank you, Francesca. It's very nice to see the room, which we were teaching together with Martin this class. I remember this room very, very well through internet. Okay, let me try to share my screen. And you let me know if you see my PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Do you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, excellent.
Wonderful. Okay, so time starts. First of all, I'm really happy to share with you news that SCAR, former School for Conflict Analysis and Resolution, now have a new name, Jimmy and Rosalind Carter School for Peace and Conflict Resolution. And I will speak today about reconciliation for peace. What is important to understand for, I believe, for future reconciliation studies? Then reconciliation happens always in the midst of identity-based conflicts. What it means for us, that it's, as usual, reconciliation as restoration or redefinition of relationship in the aftermath of conflict, but also within the conflict. And because it's identity-based conflicts, we're really speaking about reshaping social boundary. We need to think about how we define and shape and create new ideas of differences or similarities, build bridges between people, how we reduce threat which come from one group to another group. We're also speaking about environment where cooperation and peaceful coexistence are the norms of society. So we're really speaking about changing of normative dimension of the conflict. And as usual, reconciliation connected to the development of friendship, trust, empathy, but it's also important that we bring this dimension of equality and justice into this discussion of reconciliation within identity-based conflicts. And one more important moment is the formation of common or cross-cutting identities. So my first very important point, which I want to stress today, is that speaking about reconciliation, we really have to understand that we are dealing with identity-based conflicts which devise groups, define social boundaries and threat. And as one of the response to it is dealing with the past, because it's really reflect complex interrelations between system of power, group identities, and dealing with the past is one of the most important issues, not only occurring in post-conflict societies, wars, but also in democracies like United States, United Kingdom, which face empire, which face slavery and other topics. So when I speak about education about the past, I mean multiple forms of it. It's not just formal history education. It's mass culture, it's memorials, museums, heritage sites. It's reenactments of different events. There are so many things which are going in society, which address past or describe the past for us. And as a social psychologist, I always tell that past is not about even the present. History is not representing how we represent history in the present. It's how we define the future. So it's really crucial for reconciliation. Unfortunately, then we face the past, we see 4 dilemmas. And I believe that 4 dilemmas, and I will speak about them quickly, really should be one in the forefront of the analysis of reconciliation studies. And first dilemma is between critical theory and monumental history and monumental history. Monumental history is when we select particular events, transform them into inspiring myths, and the myths really take place into history. And what it makes, it's bring protagonists of the myth from the past into the present, still dividing societies. At the same time, every single, mostly every single history education, for example, in every country, really use monumental history because it increases loyalty to the nation and submission sometimes to ruling regime. Otherwise, critical history really show us how we restore justice, how we improve society, how we give multiple interpretation of the roots and causation of violence, but at the same time, critical history does not provide sense of continuity, do not provide opportunity for societies to be more coherent. So how we find this balance between 2 of them in addressing reconciliation? And just an example, in Macedonia, we see monumental history ethnocentric between Albanian and Macedonians. In Pakistan, we see very monumental history representing India as in very negative lights. In Croatia, we see a lot of critical history. However, then they address the homeland war. The history become extremely monumental. Second dilemma which reconciliation study have to address is representing history as a past or as a possibility of event reoccurring. There are a lot of calls to tell it's a past. Let's forget about it, violence events, let's move forward towards a peaceful society. Let's avoid teaching people about violence because it will help to restore relationship between people, especially create positive attitudes. But if we not speaking about reoccurring events, past continue into identities. It's embedded in our values, and it's very important to analyze processes which lead to violence, to understand what are current views, what are current situation in the society. And it's also, if we really look in the past, it gives us freedom to make decisions about values and attitudes and empower us to more positive. For example, in Sierra Leone and Uganda, we see that history completely considered as a past, nobody speaking about it. Looking forward creates culture of silence around the war. However, for example, Germany and US, again, it's not extremely, I could not say it's best, but it's probably very, very great examples of history education as prevention of violence, acknowledgement of responsibility. At least in US, I'm speaking about native population, but still a lot of things could be done about it. Third dilemma is between remembering and forgetting. How much we should remember? What amount of remembering is most effective for reconciliation? And if we forget, we should avoid description of violence, much temper memory to permit reconciliation. But at the same time, we need to acknowledge what's done. We need to address traumas. We need to address justice. The problem of remembering creates problem of selective history. What do we remember? What we forget? And it's very, very important, critical for reconciliation studies to address these issues through studies, through case studies, through analysis. For example, in Guatemala, wonderful innovations, but at the same time, selective history leads to misconceptions about violence. Its representation of both sides is equally responsible. In Rwanda, we'll see selective history legitimize exclusive power of Tutsi, and the exclusion of Hutu from the dialogue based on this genocidal ideology concept. So And final dilemma is dilemma of remembering and forgetting, and how we also support remembering or support other important social projects. In many societies, recovering from violence, recovering from the war, probably dealing with the history is not the key. And people really tell us we need to deal more with the economy, we need to restore transportation, medical services. But at the same time, we need to find these very clear arguments in reconciliation studies that you can restore economy, you can restore social services, but without addressing the past, society will not be really recovered. Society would not be really done. And we see clearly processes which going on now in the US with slavery, where we still thinking how to deal with the monuments, how to do with the naming, even the naming of my own university, which is named after a very bright person who wrote the first constitution, but also a person who owned slaves. How we deal with these very complex issues, how we restore justice and peace in societies is the key for reconciliation studies. Thank you very much. I hope I was on time.
Thank you so much. It was in time, it was great. And we are collecting questions afterwards. The debate is not taking place now. Now we go directly to the next speaker, who is Professor Asano. So Professor Asano has also a PowerPoint presentation. The screen sharing is already working. So I'm very happy to give you the word. And also to give voice to the microphone.
Thank you so much for Francesco for introducing me. My presentation is about nationalism and reconciliations. As Karina tried to concentrate upon educations, I want to concentrate upon national nations' functions toward democracy, and also two levels politics between domestic politics and international politics. There are various types of nations on this globe. As you may know, nations are imagined in our own minds. We cannot directly either see or feel a nation without some symbolic activities and languages, such as national ceremonies, anthem, and reading textbooks. Nation building process to sometimes support reconciliation in a domestic society by integrating several conflicting groups into nations, and by sharing a national emotion reflecting the experience of each group as a national memory. Also, conflicts between several nations sometimes entail strong emotions bound with selected historical memories, such as territories and victims before and just after a nation is born. In this context, I can briefly summarize my argument. The essentially common pattern of reconciliation is a kind of transformation of agents as a nation. This concept of reconciliation entailing each agent's transformations could be differentiated from compromise in international politics, when every agent itself would not be changed at all, as they are just trading their national interests. Sorry, this slide is different from my content of my presentation. Most of severe contemporary conflicts between nations and within a nation seems to derive from the transformation process of indigenous people as a nation. A nation-state system is nothing but the result of this transformation. In this context, furthermore, while the European nation-state system was born in the natural process of Enlightenment movement, civil war, and expansion as an empire, most nation-states in Asia and Africa have artificially changed after the European model of nation-states after their independence. In this context, a newly born national society and its relation with neighboring nations are becoming the cause of conflict. Examples of this conflict among non-European nations are such as that between Turkey and Armenia, Japan and Korea, and Estonia and Russia. They represent these conflicts that derive from the process of nation building, which was enabled by involving the neighboring countries. Such past conflicts turned into memory and combined with tangible issues such as territory, security, and economy give rise to contemporary conflicts. They in turn produce national emotions of the two sides. In this situation, domestic politics cannot be differentiated from international politics because politicians' legitimacy derives from national democracy, as you see in this slide. Legitimate politicians who express the national emotions properly would be selected in due course. On the other hand, in international politics, memories evoking strong emotion inside the country must be supported by universal values, such as human rights, development, and peace, which sometimes conflict with each other. Furthermore, to reflect the universal values as sources of soft power, domestic politicians must express their national emotion in a more universal language. Two levels of politics are constructing a strong structure in which nation is fixed and cannot be transformed so drastically. On the other hand, citizens can be transformed more easily in this global age as citizens in a transnational network. In this way, a good example of this structure under which nations cannot be changed at all would be, and also that symbolize a structure transcending two levels of politics is a contemporary relation between Japan and Korea. Korean labor issues and also comfort women issues are being contested severely between two nations. But because of the time, I don't have enough time to explain the details. So I just want to go back to my theoretical framework. How can we approach these conflicts from the standpoint of reconciliation studies? Should we behave as a representative of our own nations? I don't think so. However, universal values each nation seemingly entails. I want to propose two types of approach. Sorry. Oh, this is a symbolic pictures which symbolize the contesting memories between Japan and Korea. And nowadays, national images each other is worsening very bad. I want to propose two approaches to calm down our emotions, even to find out a key to transform our nations as an agent of reconciliation. The first one is to share common recognition toward each function of national emotion, memories, and so-called universal values among ourselves. However, different contents we might have in our own or socially shared emotions in each nation's society, we will be able to make a consensus on how memories, values, and emotions are combined to produce the two-level structure. In order to proceed with our new approach of reconciliation studies, it is indispensable for us to look into the function of national memories, focused in the first approach, which are bound with national memories that are being selected even unconsciously to appeal to several types of universal values, such as human rights, peace, and prosperity. I hope such recognitions would help understand the constructed character of a nation itself. The second approach is also to nurture our consensus among scholars and practitioners on the past development of conflicting nations by focusing upon its interrelated development, such as colonialism, war, and economic relations. By bridging the first and the second approaches, reconciliation studies would be increasingly more attractive to those citizens in the global age who regard simple national discourses as boring and frozen. I hope in some near future, the transformation of nations would be evoked by being able to discuss its function together, and following that, new kinds of recognitions would inspire younger generations and globalized citizens, giving them the power to resist against old national missions of our reconciliation studies seems to focus on how we can find a new channel to transform each other, even unconsciously, through our communications, in order for us to adapt to another set of conflicting universal values. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Asano. Thank you for this contribution from the political history of East Asia. Now we have a third